Welcome to Organizational Behavior Exam 2 review. We are going to go over all the definitions for this exam. Two quick disclaimers. Number one, I'm no management expert, so I'll try my best and we'll try to learn, but take everything, probably study on your own too. And there are going to be some memes in here. They might be a little cringy, but they're going to help us remember. So let's get into it. So this is chapter 5, 6, 7, and 9. So chapter 5 is about personality and individual differences. And so the first term is personality job fit theory. So we're not going to go over all these traits, but this is 6 main personality traits that basically determine whether you're going to be satisfied in your job. So this theory says the fit between your personality plus the environment will equal job satisfaction. Next is person organization fit. And so this is a theory that people are attracted to and selected by organizations that match their values, and they leave when they don't match. So this is a scene from the Bee Movie when they're trying to pick their job, and I like this movie. I actually rewatched it recently and it was good. It was more realistic than you'd think. But this idea is basically saying when who you are and your internal values match the job, you're more likely to go there and be selected. Okay, personality. This is the total number of ways in which an individual reacts to and interacts with the world. Love this meme. Okay, personality traits. So these are characteristics that describe that individual behavior. So kindness is an example. Myers-Briggs personality test, or type indicator. So this is a test, and we took it in class, and it's where there are 16 personality types. There's an introvert or extrovert. I know the T and the F are thinking and feeling, then the J and the P are judging and perceiving, and the N is intuitive or sensing. So sometimes jobs will have you take this personality test. I know at my church back home, everybody who's hired there takes it, which is kind of cool. So you kind of know your strengths and who you're working with. Okay, so the Big Five model. This is a personality model that proposes 5 basic dimensions of human personality. So this is openness, extroversion versus introversion, consciousness or conscientiousness, emotional stability, and agreeableness. So conscientiousness, this is the dimension that basically describes someone who is patient, dependent, persistent, organized, kind of your awareness and if you're a conscious person towards others. Next is emotional stability. And so this is the dimension that basically says, are you relatively level? Do you have a lot of positive, negative emotions? Is there a lot of fluctuation? Extroversion, so this is the dimension that describes how much you like to, interact with others. Are you sociable, assertive, kind of an extroverted personality, exterior? I think it comes from the same Latin root word, how outward focused you are. I guess of course introverts can be outward focused, but just how much you show it. Openness to experience, so this basically says how adventurous you are and how curious you are. Agreeableness, so this is how cooperative you are, how good-natured, how kind of friendly, how reciprocal you are in your relationships. And so this is on the opposite side. This is called the dark triad. Tri, of course, meaning 3, like triangle. So these are 3 personality types that are not so good. So we have, this word gets me every time. Narcissism, psychopathy, Malka. I'm not going to try to pronounce this. My teacher did in class and it was crazy, but I'll explain it in a sec. This is the degree to which an individual is pragmatic and maintains emotional distance. So this basically means I think of Professor Umbridge, how easily you can detach from probably in this context, like what you have to do, your work, and the emotions connect to it. So of course a little of that is good, but like if you take it to an extreme, then it becomes like not good. Narcissism, of course, all of these three I think are like, or maybe not psychopathy. I was about to say all of these are kind of good. Like confidence is probably like a less extreme version of narcissism, um, but this is basically like too self-confident, too self-important. You just think you're the you're the world. You're the beep. Okay, psychopathy. This is the tendency to lack concern for others. So basically, like a lack of guilt for your actions that are bad, of course. Core self-evaluation. So this is kind of how you think of yourself. The bottom line conclusions individuals have about their capabilities, competence, and worth as a person. Self-monitoring. So this is a personality trait that measures an individual's ability to adjust their behavior to external situational factors. So this is basically kind of like emotional regulation, how you're able to control yourself and how you react to things that are outside of your force or outside of your control. Proactive personality. So this is people who identify opportunities and show initiative. And so I remember when playing soccer, we always had coaches say like, you got to be proactive. Like that was like the buzzword. They want you to be proactive with everything. Like emailing colleges for recruiting, they're like, you got to be proactive. You got to reach out first. Or like, go towards the ball. You got to be proactive. Or you need to be proactive with your warm up. You should have started it before practice, before I told you. Like stuff like that, which is good. But it was like, you always got to be thinking about the next step. It was a little tiring, but it was fun. Situation strengths theory. So this is so interesting. A theory indicating that the way personality translates into behavior depends on the strength of the situation. So basically, this is kind of like an internal dial that everyone has, and it says like how strong the situation is depends on how you react. So maybe for example, let me think of something that would make me happy. Um, okay, I'll think of two examples. So like getting a good grade back on a test or like a quiz, like a small class one, or seeing my boyfriend. And so both of those would make me happy, but the strength, like getting a good grade on a quiz, it's like, like it's good. So I'd be like, oh, I'm happy. And I'm still happy. It's not a different emotion. But when I see my boyfriend, I'd be like, ah! So it'd be like that much more happy. So this is basically saying like, your reaction, like it can be the same emotion, but like different strengths depending on how you perceive the like what's happening. Trait activation theory. So this is a theory that predicts that some situations or events activate a trait more than others. And so I love to watch Survivor, and so this is basically I'll explain this in a sec, but this is basically saying that different situations cause different strengths to be activated. So in the challenges in Survivor, sometimes there's like a physical challenge, sometimes there's a mental challenge, sometimes there's a social challenge. So they'll have like puzzles, and you'll have to activate like the puzzle solving part of your brain, of course, or like lifting heavy stuff. That'll be like more like strength, of course. And so, oh, I hope this doesn't stop. I just saw something download. This was so funny. This girl was leaving, and she literally, this girl just voted out Natalie. And this is a meme. It didn't actually say that on there. But she was leaving after she just voted her out, and she's like, Natalie, wait. And then Natalie said, what? Can I have your jacket? And she was leaving because it was really cold. And then Natalie's like, I'm over you people. She's like, Natalie, can I have your jacket? It was so funny. Look it up if you like Survivor or stuff like that. It was so funny. Okay, ability. For the next couple, I did like kind of soccer analogies. I just try to apply this to normal life to make it applicable. Ability is an individual's capacity to perform various tasks in a job. So this would be like skills in soccer, I think of. And then physical abilities, this is would be like strength, stamina, soccer, how fast you run. Intellectual abilities, so this is the capacity to do mental activities. So this would be like your soccer IQ, how you see the field, where you pass the ball, do you make good decisions. General mental ability, so this is the overall factor of intelligence. Pretty self-explanatory. Values, this is basic convictions someone has. Of course, you all know what values are. Just ethics. Do you have integrity? Those are some values over there. Value system. So this is a hierarchy based on a ranking of an individual's values. And so it's interesting to just think about people have different values. That's crazy. I guess that kind of, for me, it really gets at one of my faith for God, because it's how is there a right and wrong unless there's one main authority that says okay, this is what you should value, and I guess it's a little different. That's more maybe relating to ethics, but it's just so interesting how the human species, I feel like fish all have the same value system, but humans value things differently, which is just so fascinating. But yeah. So terminal values. So this is desirable ends, terminal, meaning terminated, stopping. So this is basically saying the goals a person would like to achieve. So this is a family, or this is things you value, that it's okay, you can get that, and it's okay, once I get that, that would be a terminal value. Maybe happiness would be one. That seems like an ongoing process, whereas maybe a terminal value would be I'd love to travel to France or something like that, even though that's more of a goal rather than a value. Maybe have a good family is more of a value. Instrumental values. So this is basically how you're going to get there. So having a nice family would be being nice to one another. And I like to think of it instrument, the instruments are what are used to make the music. So the instrumental values are what's made to make the terminal values, or the end goals, the music. Chapter 6, we're already through one chapter. That's great. So perception and individual decision making is what chapter 6 is on. So perception, a process by which individuals organize and interpret their sensory impressions to give meaning to their environment. So this is basically how you see things. Attribution theory, so this is an attempt to explain the ways we judge people differently. So basically saying, what do we attribute, attribution, what do we attribute to people or situations that cause us to judge them? Fundamental attribution error. Ooh, let's see. I kind of forgot what this one is. A tendency to underestimate the influence of external factors and overestimate the influence of internal factors when making judgments about the behaviors of others. Okay, and I remember this one because I'm it's interesting that you do it to others and not to yourself. So if someone was late, you might say you don't care, or because you don't know the background of or maybe the reason why they're late. So you might make that error I make the I attribute you as being unconscientious or something like that. But if you're late, you might be oh, I had a late night last night, and I was just spending extra time with God this morning, or cooking a yummy breakfast. They'll understand. So it's just that difference, which is interesting. Self-serving bias. So this is the other side of the coin that we just said. It's just saying oh, I failed my exam because the professor, they didn't teach me well, or something like that. Selective perception. So this is the tendency to choose and interpret what one sees based on one's interest or background. And we were talking about this in my poetry class the other day, that poetry is one of those interesting classes that, math, since it's more objective, you don't really bring your perceptions or background into it too much, although you might solve a problem in a different way. But poetry, it's probably the class where you most bring your biases, your interests, your positive experiences, your negative experiences. And so our teacher was telling, be aware of your perceptions, and it's interesting to think about them. So the halo effect, this is basically where you see positive attributes on the outside, and you just assume positive on the inside. So this normally refers to people, but of course it can be like even buildings, food, basically where you see something nice and you think, okay, that's good. I think of it when my cousin made a smoothie, and she got what she thought were frozen bananas from the freezer and put it in the smoothie, and the smoothie, she was like, oh, it looked good, like, whatever, I'm sure it looked like a banana, it looked like a smoothie, and it actually turned out to be frozen chicken. It was, that sounds so gross. So this would be the halo effect. So the horns effect, this is the opposite of that. Look at this chihuahua or whatever this is. It's so silly. This is basically where you see negative things on the outside and you assume that about the inside. So the opposite, let me think of a food example. Maybe, I remember it was the ugliest but the yummiest omelet ever. Or it wasn't even an omelet, it was just like this egg scramble, but there was like green, like the green onions kind of got into it, so it was kind of green and a little like it wasn't the best texture, but it was so yummy. That would be an example of the horns effect. The contrast effect. So this is evaluation of a person's characteristics that is affected by comparison with other people recently encountered who rank higher or lower. So I remember this was interesting to think about with scouting, like for soccer college. Like just thinking about, me and my dad always used to talk about like, oh, it'd be so fun to be a scout, and you could just be like a big data nerd and like go out to watch games and sit outside and just watch people play soccer, but also like we like spreadsheets and data and stuff like that. So it's very interesting to think about like, okay, if you go to a team that's not as good, to look at, like, let's just say you're scouting for a girl, like, I don't know, sophomore, and you look at them play and they're playing with people who are a lot worse than them and against a team that's a lot worse, you're obviously going to think you're like, oh, they're so good, we got to recruit them right now, they just scored 5 goals. But then if you like look on the opposite end, maybe someone is like playing up a year, so they're like maybe a little like less developed, but they'll get there, like maybe it's a freshman playing with like juniors or something, then that would have like the contrast effect because you'd contrast them and you'd say, oh, that maybe they're not as good as those. But it's all about context, so I just thought this was interesting. Okay, self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a situation in which an individual's behavior is determined by others' expectations, or I think sometimes your own. And so this reminds me about how when I had TikTok during quarantine, everyone was like, oh, they're always saying throwback, like, oh, it's never like 2016, like this year's gonna be the worst, and then it was the worst. I was like, come on, people, we're coming into it with a negative attitude. We gotta be upbeat. But this is basically saying like, if what you believe will happen, like if you believe it, and obviously there's limits to that. So this is a decision, and obviously y'all know what a decision is: a choice from 2 or more alternatives. A problem. So this is a discrepancy between the current state and some desired state. This is one of my favorite teachers or pastors, and Tim Keller, and he said, one of our problems with suffering is he talked about the gap, the discrepancy between our state of being and what we think we should have, and so if you adjust that gap, you should it should be easier for you to I guess be happy. So I thought that I'm butchering. He said it so beautifully in a sermon, but it helped me a lot. So rational. This is a style of decision making that's consistent and has specific constraints. So staying kind of in the norms and a good decision. So This is a decision-making model, rational decision-making, that describes how individuals should behave to maximize some outcome. So it basically goes through it, seeing the problem. I don't believe we need to know every specific one, but you can pause it if you want to go through. Okay, bounded rationality. So this is a simplified process of making decisions by perceiving and interpreting the essential features of a problem without capturing their complexity. So I think I said bounded because it's like a boundary. This ant, apparently if you draw a circle around an ant, it'll stay in the boundary. And so this is basically simplifying a problem to make the most rational decision. So we have this big problem right here, but we can kind of take out the x's and make, like, I forgot what this is called. This is like middle school and I don't remember. I guess not cross multiply, but cancel out and just do the same problem, but with a much simpler problem. Intractable problem. So this is a problem, intractable, that may change entirely or become irrelevant before you even finish the process of organizing your thoughts or gathering information or making decisions. And so this is a problem that may change entirely. I think I put this here because maybe an example would be like if you say like, oh, I'm hungry, and then you get like busy with work or something, and then someone makes you a bunch of food and it's so nice, but then you're like, oh, now I'm doing something else, I'm not even hungry. So a problem that's solved before you really even need to solve it. Intuition. So this is the ability, I like this one, to understand something instinctively. I don't believe in intuition, but I have a strange feeling I will someday. So this is kind of like a gut feeling or something that you can't necessarily explain why you think. So intuitive decision-making is an unconscious process created out of distilled experience. Distilled. I forgot what that word means, but this example would be like sometimes you get like an intuition that like maybe your friend's a little bothered with you or like there's something wrong and you can't really put your finger on it, but it's just an intuition thing. And it's just like a gut feeling. So decision making would be saying like, hey, are you good? Like, everything cool? Or something like that. Overconfident bias. So this is a tendency to be overconfident about our own abilities or the abilities of others. And so this is a little mouse. He's going in for the mouse trap. I hope he doesn't get trapped, but he's probably too confident. Anchoring bias. So this is a tendency to fixate on initial information rather than what you get after. So this is basically like whatever you see first, that's what you're anchored to, that's what you believe most rather than information after. Okay, I take that back. It's believing one piece of information, not necessarily the first information. This is conflicting. Our book said initial information, but I think that's a different one. I think anchoring bias is just one piece of information rather than the whole thing. Confirmation bias. So this is the tendency excuse me. This is the tendency to seek out information that affirms an idea that you already have. So if one becomes aware of confirmation bias, do they get confirmation bias? Oh, that's so funny. Okay. Availability bias. So this is a tendency for people to base their judgments on information that is readily available to them. So whatever information you have, you think, okay, that's the truth because I have it, it's available. Escalation of commitment. So this is an increased commitment to a previous decision despite negative information. So this is basically saying like, oh, one example might be if you in high school, everybody was going to like an expensive academic school, so you might be like, oh, I want to go there, like everybody's going, let me go. And so you're 3 years in debt and you're like, oh shoot, this was a bad decision. But you're already there and you're with your friends and you're going in the flow and it's too much work to get a degree plan, even if it'd be cheaper to do like 4 years so you just take on 1 more year of debt, even though it's probably not the best decision. Randomness error. So this is the tendency of individuals to believe that they can predict the outcome of random events. This is so easy. I fall into this all the time, especially like when I'm playing Yahtzee with my mom. I'll think I can roll like I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a 5 and a 2. It's just random, but I don't know. It'd be so interesting to study that psychology and think like what in our brains think makes us think we can do that. I'm sure it's connected to gambling and like definitely why one would want to gamble because they might think they can be able to predict, but that's pretty interesting. Let me do an example. I bet I'm gonna ask Siri to pick a number 1 through 3. I'm gonna guess. I'm definitely predicting she's doing 1. Ah! Hey Siri, pick a number 1 through 3.
It's 3.
No! See, I fell into the randomness error. Dang. Ah. Risk aversion, the tendency to prefer a sure gain of moderate account over a riskier outcome. Okay, I'm going to say you're quite risk averse. So this is basically saying, and this is not a bad thing. I'd say this is probably a good thing, honestly. So I think of this like in stocks. Like it was probably most wise instead of buying like putting all your money in Bitcoin and hoping it goes up to just do like S&P 500, and it'll be slower but it'll pay off, and like it's less risk averse, even though if stock if Bitcoin goes up like it did at first, you would probably get more, but it's best to not lose your money. So hindsight bias, this is the tendency to believe falsely after an outcome if an event is known that one would have accurately predicted. So maybe if you're like making a bet of like what team's gonna win, like a football game or something, and you're like, okay, I bet 49ers are gonna win, or I bet, I don't know, Cowboys versus 49ers, I bet Cowboys will win, and the 49ers win, and you say, oh well, I knew it, but I just wanted to take a risk. This is the idea that you say, oh, I knew that the whole time. I was just taking a risk. I was doing that. So outcome bias. This is the tendency to judge the quality of a decision based on the desired outcome. This is so interesting. So I think of this like when you're shooting a penalty kick. This is a debate. I still don't know where I totally stand. Basically, the debate is the penalty kick good if it's a good penalty kick or if it goes in? So a penalty kick that would be bad would be like one at mid-height because that's where the goalie's hands are, or one that's too slow, or one where there's maybe it's down the middle. Usually those aren't the best. But one that's good would be like on the ground, real fast paced to the corner. But then some people come along and say, well, what's the goal of a penalty kick? Just for it to go in. So if it goes in, it's a good penalty kick. But if it goes out, it's not. I don't know if I agree with that, because if it just hits the post, but it was hit at perfect pace, a little spin, or perfect height, and it just hits the post, sometimes you get unlucky, or sometimes it hits some grass or something. So I'm not sure, but the outcome bias would say if it goes in, then it's a good kick. Okay. Utilitarianism is an ethical perspective in which decisions are made to provide for the greatest good for all. So in this, utilitarianism would say if people were stuck on an island, this is a little bit of a morbid example, but the ethical decision would be to sacrifice the biggest the biggest guy, and this is what you got to do because it would benefit the most people. And so this is I think from the word utility, there's probably too much utility in that. That's obviously, you should not do that, or try not to get stuck on an island, or hunt and gather. I don't know. But utilitarianism is basically saying whatever is good for the most people is the right thing to do. Whistleblowers, snitches, individuals who report unethical practices by their employer to outsiders. So, what was this example? Sharpening a pencil. Oh, I feel like I had a funny story about that. It doesn't matter. I'm trying to make this not too long because it's 9:25 already. But, let's go to this. Do Deonce? Deonance? I actually don't know this word. A perspective in which ethical decisions are made because you ought to, in order to be consistent with norms, principles, or laws. So Dion in Greek means duty, and um, I actually thought this was interesting to think about because you at first you might not think it's that sweet or loving, like if you are in a relationship or like your family or friends, if you're like, okay, I should probably do this or I have to do this, I ought to, um, then then you think, okay, they're just just doing it out of duty. But actually, I was reading this book the other day and it was like, um, it's actually can be a inverse relationship where like it can flow both ways where um, if you do something because you have to, it leads to love. And if you love to do it, you keep doing it. Doing it out of duty can lead to doing it to love, out of love. So I thought this was nice. Okay, behavioral ethics. So this is analyzing why people behave the way they do. So there are many situations. This is the classic. Would you switch the lever? This is basically saying why do people behave in ethical dilemmas the way they do. So problem formulation. This. I'll do a couple stages, and so I thought of the example if you want to thaw or cook chicken. So problem formulation. This is the stage of creative behavior that involves identifying the problem. So the problem: we have this frozen chicken, and Mom's gonna be home in an hour, and we need this chicken cooked. What are we gonna do? Information gathering. Okay, the siblings are brainstorming together and we're thinking of solutions. We could put it in the oven, that'll take too long. The microwave, we could just buy chicken and say we thought it. What are we going to do? Idea generation. So, this is the process that involves finding the solution. So, we're going to put it in a plastic bag in hot water. That'll do it. And then idea evaluation. This is the process of creative behavior involving the evaluation of potential solutions. So, okay, that was a good idea or was that a bad idea? Okay, chapter 7, motivational concepts. So, motivation is the process that accounts for an individual's intensity, direction, and persistence. Those are the three. IDP, let me think of an analogy. Okay, it's going to be I daily pray. So this is, that could be good. Intensity, direction, and persistence. I daily pray. So intensity is how hard a person tries. So lifting the weight really hard, basically your force. Direction. So this is which way are you going? So if you're trying really hard, but you're trying really hard at something that doesn't matter or that is actually counterproductive, that's not very good. You want to have good direction too. And then persistence. I love this meme. This is like the New Year's in the gym. New Year's Day when everyone makes resolutions and then March. So this is a measure of how long a person can maintain that effort, that intensity and direction. So it's good if you have intensity and direction, but having consistency and persistence is also very important. So hierarchy of needs. This is by Abraham Maslow, and these are the 5 main needs humans have. So there's physiological, so hunger and thirst, safety, which is security, social, love and connection, esteem, self-respect, and self-actualization, so the highest, so growth and drive. And this is the order he says. This is the basic that everyone needs, and this is, he says most people don't even achieve, like, the higher, like, this is where most people land at. But I'd be good with just food, safety, and love. But this is good too. This is the pyramid in order. 2-factor theory. So this relates to intrinsic job factors, intrinsic factors to job satisfaction. So basically, it's called the motivation hygiene theory. It's saying there are 2 things that lead to job satisfaction. There's the feelings of accomplishment and the intrinsic factors, like, okay, I feel that I'm doing a good job, people like me, I'm satisfied with my work. And then there's the external factors, maybe you don't like the hours, or you don't like the pay. So you have to balance those 2 things. the hygiene factors are the external factors, so like the company's rules, who's in charge, the pay schedule. So McKellen's theory of needs is basically there are three main things: the need for power, and these are three things that motivate people: the need for achievement and the need for affiliation. So this is the dance that I made up. Go poof, 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 poof. So you could go power, achievement like the trophy, and then affiliation, so the handshake. So the power, you want to have esteem, you want to have influence on people's behavior. Achievement is you want to have success, and affiliation is, friendship and being well liked. So self-determination theory, this is theory that has to do with satisfaction and autonomy. So this is saying satisfaction is linked to motivation. So basically, if you're satisfied in what you do and you think you will be satisfied after you do another task, you will keep working. And you'll think you can do it. So cognitive evaluation theory, this basically says extrinsic rewards for behavior tend to decrease the overall level of motivation if the rewards are seen as controlling. So this has a lot to do with autonomy. It's basically saying, like, if your boss is like, okay, I'll give you this and I'll give you this, of course you might like it at first, but if you're like being told like, okay, you need to do this and I'll give you like a couple extra bucks, you're either going to feel babied or you're going to feel like, oh, I would have done it for free. Like, they think they have to, like, maybe pay me for everything. Or like, if you're motivated to do something and then you get paid, you might like link the pay and the job, and there's just a lot of dynamics here with this one. Self-concordance. This is the degree to which people's reasons for pursuing goals are consistent with their interests. So I think of like a missionary going out. This is probably the highest level of this, like, or like the most connected someone's reasons are for doing their goals. So this is like how much your work relates to your inner self. Need for autonomy. So this is my boss micromanaging me, my intrinsic motivation to do a good job. One's desire to feel in control and autonomous. So it has a lot to do with competency, thinking you can do stuff, and having people who trust you is also important too. So the need for competence, the desire to feel like you're good at it. So being autonomous is more like freedom, and then competence is feeling like, I love this meme, feeling like you can do what is being asked of you. So promotion focus versus prevention focus. Both are self-regulation strategies. Promotion is more like proactive, so it involves like doing stuff to achieve your goals. So if you want to be healthy, you should eat healthy foods. And prevention is by avoiding things that would stop you from your goals. So eating unhealthy foods would be prevention. Job engagement. And so this is the investment of an employee's physical, cognitive, and emotional energies into a job. I think of like engagement. This is the most invested you could be into, of course, someone. So I think of like that as like engagement. So how engaged are you with your job? How committed, how invested are you? Reinforcement theory. So this is the theory that suggests that behavior is a function of its consequences. So like with a dog, hey, or like don't do that. Then it will like correlate and slowly over time change its behavior based on the consequences or the outcomes. Behaviorism, this is a theory stating that behavior follows a stimuli in a relatively unthinking manner. So I thought of like conditioning, if there's a bell and food, the dog will associate the bell and food without thinking. Social learning theory, this is the idea that we can learn through both observation and experience. So we have these kids watching basketball and this kid playing, and it's important to do both to be, good at a sport or anything, I'm guessing. Expectancy theory, this is the strength of a tendency to act, or the idea that the strength of a tendency to act depends on the strength of an expectation and the attractiveness expectation. Sorry, I'm butchering this. This is basically saying how motivated you're going to be is determined by the outcome and how desirable that outcome is. So if you are studying for a test and you think the outcome, it can be an A, and that A is something that you really want, if you really like good grades, you're going to study more. Goal setting theory. This is a theory that intentions to work towards a goal are considered a major source of work motivation. This is has to do with goal setting. I think of New Year's resolutions. So how intentional you are about doing something is, of course, going to cause you to be more motivated. Management by objectives. So this is a program that encompasses specific goals for a time and gives progress back. So this is basically saying when you set goals, kind of like goal setting theory, you are more likely to do them. Self-efficacy. So this is an individual's belief of being capable of performing a task. So if you believe you can do it, you can do it. Equity theory. This is a theory stating that individuals compare their job inputs and outcomes with those of others. So equity coming from like the word equality. People like to make sure, they're being paid equal, which I don't have time to get into. I'm trying to make this a shorter video. But organizational justice. This is an overall perception of what is fair in the workplace. Distributive justice. This is the perceived fairness among individuals about punishment and rewards. So even if you're getting like a punishment that's not that bad, if someone, got off without being punished, you might be like, oh, that's not fair. That's not just. This is procedural justice. This is a perceived fairness of the process used to determine that reward or punishment. So procedural, like procedure. The show is so funny. It's called Jury Duty. I recommend. Oh, that was so good. Informational justice. This is the degree to which employees are provided truthful explanations for their decisions. So if you get in trouble, are you told, what you did wrong, how you can improve? Are you given a lot of information, or are you just told, like, don't do it again, even if you're like, what did I do? Don't. Interpersonal justice. This is the degree to which employees are treated with dignity and respect. So interpersonally, are you on a day-to-day basis respected and well-liked? Chapter 9, one more chapter. Foundations of group behavior. So this is a group versus a team. A group is two or more individuals coming together to achieve a goal, and a team is also that, but they're mutually accountable for success and failure. So I think of it like the reward and punishment. So a group, if you had, 3 or 4 people in a group project, the outcome, everybody's still probably going to get an individual grade, even if you get a grade for the overall project. But a team, you win and lose together. Like, you are mutually accountable for success and failure. So that's kind of where the difference comes down to. A formal group, so this is defined by an organization or, the teacher saying, get into a group, I'll assign you by last name. An informal group is kind of like, a friend group or a group that is not from like a higher power, just people that come together. So social identity theory, this is perspective that considers when and why individuals consider themselves members of a group. So why do you think you're part of a group, whether it's formal or informal? Do you pay a membership bill? Do you have a uniform? Do you do stuff together? Why are you part of this group? Punctuated equilibrium model. So this is, so obviously the equilibrium is like, well, actually not obviously, because I don't really even know. I think it's that thing that goes back and forth when you want to find the middle. We can look it up later. This is a set of phrases that phases that temporary groups go through that involve working and not working, inertia, like movement, and activity. So basically there's a workflow of a group just like individuals. A role. So this is a set of expected behavior patterns attributed to someone occupying a given position in a social unit. So this is like your role in a group work, and everyone has a role in a group that you're part of, whether we know it or not. So this is the role perception, an individual's view of how to act in a given situation. So how do you perceive your role? What do you think your responsibilities are? How do you view what you're asked to do? Role expectation. So this is how other people view your role. So how should you act if you're in a group at work? You should probably not be sleeping or messing around. Psychological contracts. So this is an unwritten agreement between employees and employers about expectations about the job. So maybe sometimes they put it in the contract, sometimes not. They'll be friendly, not late, don't steal from the cash register, stuff like that. Role conflict. So these two next ones are going to be like role conflict versus something. So role conflict is a situation in which an individual is confronted with divergent role expectations. So maybe you're on a soccer team and you're just playing for fun, AYSO, but your coach expects you to be messy. That would be a role conflict. But an inter-role conflict is a situation where you yourself are conflicted with different roles. So maybe you're a soccer player, but you're also a tennis player. So there's conflict between, how much can I train, what's my schedule, stuff like that. Norms. This is acceptable standards of behavior within a group. And conformity is how you align with those norms. Reference groups. This was the scariest movie. I was so scared of the Abominable Snowmancer monster. But this is groups to which individuals belong that are like, upper class, I guess. Not upper class, but like, I put this picture because I think of like the reindeer games. Kind of like important groups that people hope to belong to, popular or whatever. So status is a socially defined position or rank given to groups. So kind of similar to that. People want to be in groups with high status. Status characteristics theory is a theory stating that differences in status characteristics create, kind of mini groups or mini hierarchies within the groups. Social loafing. This is the tendency for an individual to expend less effort when working with others. So I just thought of this, like kicking your feet up. I think it came from like this idea, like kick your feet up on the desk, like relax and do no work. Sometimes if you're in a group project, there's either someone who does that or maybe, everybody's been there where they are in their area expertise and they maybe social loaf a little. But the idea that you do less work when you're working with others. Cohesion is the shared bond driving group members to work together. So being like together, then hesion, like sticking together. Groupthink is a phenomenon in which the norm for consensus overrides the realistic appraisal of alternative courses of action. So this is basically saying the group decision, the pressure for agreeableness will outweigh good decision making or better decision making. Group shift. So this is a change between a group's decisions and an individual decision. So it's that gap. So this guy might, if he was alone, just take that green post-it and go and say, this one's good. But if he's working with a group, the group might say, okay, let's think about it and take, the yellow one or something like that. Okay, that's all. I hope this helped. Thank you so much for watching.